with your child, make it an occasion to eat together. Maybe
Okay.
you have to change your timings.
Or how do you strike a balance between being a supportive and an overprotective parent?
It's perfectly all right to make mistakes. Seeing children should see their parents as human and not as perfectionists. So if you make a mistake, just own up to it.
As a society are really bad at is accepting failure, and therefore I guess you have exams and grades and you rank 34 out of 35 and you came first. How can parents develop a healthy attitude towards failure? Hi everyone, welcome to No Idea Whatsoever. I have Samini Phillip with me today, who is the director of the Early Years program at Learning Matters. She focuses on progressive learning through play. She talks about good parenting, authenticity, how important play-based learning is for children, and how you as a parent can make all the difference to make sure that they grow up to be emotionally safe individuals. Hi, Samini.
Hello.
Welcome to No Idea Whatsoever.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for coming. So, Samini, my first question to you is: did you know what you were going to do when you grew up, or did you have no idea whatsoever?
So I think, like most adolescents, I had no idea whatsoever what I was going to do.
Yeah.
But I knew that I was interested in psychology and I wanted to study psychology. So this is way back when I was in 11th grade. I took a psychology class and fell in love with the subject, all because of the teacher. She made it so inspiring and engaging. And then after that, I took an advanced placement psychology class in 12th grade. And went on to major in psychology.
Which school were you in?
When I was in the 7th grade, I switched to the American school, which is here in New Delhi. Really, I switched because my mom, who taught at the American school for many, many years, could see the stark difference in the quality of the teaching and what students were being exposed to. And she really felt that I could benefit from this kind of learning environment.
As a student, when you moved on, what was the stark difference you felt as a learner?
I think for me, I would say that the equation between students and teachers was balanced at the American school. There was a lot of respect for children and their ideas. It was less of rote memorization. It wasn't just towards the end of the year where there was an emphasis on the exams and everybody performing for those exams. It was project based. You had to work consistently throughout the year over there. And most importantly, I would say that learning was joyful. It was fun. It was engaging. The teachers were inspiring.
As opposed to it not being that way with the CBSE.
At least not for me. I loved it socially.
Yeah.
But academically, I think I needed a different kind of environment that was more nurturing. It wasn't that one size fits all kind of environment.
Yeah. Did you think you performed better at the American school?
Yes, absolutely. I started thriving.
Really?
Loved school, loved my classes, loved my teachers. Also started feeling emotionally safe.
Okay. So what were the parts about school, before you joined the American school that frustrated you?
I think the teachers who were not always kind, and there are children and there are children. So there are children who are resilient and who can
take it.
Yes, absolutely take it. And it's just like water off a duck's back. But for someone like me who is a sensitive person, I think it left a deep impact.
And when you went to the American school, were you still in that zone of feeling a bit worried about, how teachers would react? Or
initially, yes. But then once I got to know the environment, got to know the teachers, then it was very comfortable.
So how would you, if you had to give an example of the type of teacher that any Indian school has versus, for example, what you were exposed to at the American school, what would those qualities be? Or differences, rather?
I think at AES, the teachers were kind, they were nurturing. You could see that a lot of prep work had gone into the lessons,
Hmm.
ensuring that students understood what was being taught.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think that there is a big pressure around marks and grades in India even now?
I think it also depends on which school you're
Hmm.
in.
But predominantly, I would say.
Yes, yes, that just determines how successful you are in school. But as we know, there's no correlation between school success and life success.
Hmm.
And school is not easy because you have to be good at so many subjects. You have to be good at history, geography, maths, English, Hindi,
Science.
physics,
Yeah.
chemistry, right? There's so many subjects that a child has to be good at. But to be successful in life, you have to be good at just that one thing. It could be anything. You're a great golfer, you want to become a pianist, you like numbers and you want to go into finance. In life, to be successful, you just need to be good at that one thing.
So, how can teachers inculcate that sense of understanding that you're talking about now from a young age? That how do we make that change in India? What do we do to make it happen?
So I would say teacher training
Hmm.
is a requirement. That's the need of the hour. Because if you've gone through that training, and then it doesn't matter if you change your school also, wherever you go, you take those skills with you,
Hmm.
and you can reach out to children everywhere. And really understanding the science of learning, and knowing that pedagogy deeply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you at Learning Matters focus a lot on teacher training? How do you hire your teachers?
So the number one factor is obviously you have to have a love for children.
Yeah.
And that is something that cannot be taught. It's either you have it
Hmm.
or you don't have it. Then after that, there is training. And most teachers who come to us, they have to unlearn what they know and relearn, because our approach is totally different. It's child centered. Our curriculum is an emergent curriculum, which means it stems from the children. Most schools, I would say, even all schools, the curriculum is preset and children have to fit that curriculum. But
Hmm.
ours is the opposite. The curriculum has to fit the children. So, for example, if in one classroom, teachers are noticing that children are very engaged, with play around going to the doctor, and there's a lot of play around that they're witnessing, they'll convert that into a whole doctor's clinic with real stethoscopes and injections and x-rays, and you'll see children's play come alive around that. And that's how children work through their experiences, their emotions, how they're feeling when they go to the doctor through that pretend play.
Hmm. And after the American school, just coming back to your school years a little bit, you went for your master's. Sorry, you did your undergrad from?
Mhm. From a college, a liberal arts college called Oberlin,
You
which,
did psychology
yes, I
there.
studied psychology.
So
Yes.
did you know always that you wanted to go abroad? Did you even try studying in India, or was it something that you'd already decided?
No, that was something that I had decided, but really the reason why I ended up going to the States before my undergrad was because of my younger brother.
Okay.
And while he looked like all children, he didn't learn like all children. And he studied right from the beginning in the American school. And my mom happened to be a teacher there. And literally one day, my parents were told that my brother couldn't study there anymore. They couldn't figure out his learning profile, they couldn't figure out how to help him. So my parents had to open up the world map to see where we needed to go to give him what he needed, which was halfway across the world in Washington, D.C. So we moved. That was only my dad, my mom, brother, and I. My dad had to stay here because his work was here, and he traveled every 6 weeks to see us over there. My mom enrolled in a second master's in special education to really understand this field
Wow.
deeply. I enrolled in high school over there, so I was there 11th and 12th grade. And my brother went to a school, and it was called the Lab School of Washington, and where my mom was earning her second master's in special ed. She would take what she was learning and put it into practice into the classroom. And then, when my brother was old enough to go to a boarding school, she moved back to India. She put him in a boarding school, moved back to India, and really felt that if her son had struggled, there would be other children who
Hmm.
are struggling. But not that everyone can just up and move,
Correct.
right? There would be other parents. So those were really the seeds of Learning Matters when she came back to India and started working with children at home. Then slowly, moved to my dad's office and was working over there. And then we opened our first center in Defense Colony in 2005. We hired a team of professionals from abroad, a psychologist, a speech and language therapist, to come and help us get started. This is again way back in 2005.
Yeah.
And then in 2007, we started our early childhood program.
Okay.
Mhm.
And when you were at the Oberlin College, what inspired you to study psychology? Was it your brother, or were you always interested
No,
in
so
it?
my interest in psychology really came when I was in 11th grade.
Okay.
And I took a class, and the
What class
teacher,
was that?
psychology.
No, but what was that class about?
It
Do you
was just an
remember any?
introduction to
Okay, just an
psychology. Yes,
introduction.
it was
Okay.
an introduction to psychology. But I loved it. I loved it because of the teacher. She made it very engaging. She inspired me a lot. And then it was really because of her I went on to take another psychology class. And then I'd made up my mind that this is something that interests me. So I majored in psychology at Oberlin. And then I went on to study social and political science.
Yeah, and that you went to Cambridge for that.
Yes.
So how come political science?
No, so because they're all social sciences.
Okay.
So this was a degree called SPS for short, social and political science. So in that, I had to take various courses. Some were psychology, there was sociology, there was anthropology, some political science. So it was a mix.
And how did you get exposure to all these subjects? Because I remember when I was in grade 11 and 12, I hadn't even heard the word anthropology in my school, at least, you know. So did you have exposure to this because you think you went on to a different type of school, or do you think this is something that now people are talking about in schools today in India?
I think it was because of the environment,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah.
And how was your experience studying at Cambridge? And what did you think? How did that add to you?
So I think in Cambridge, the skills that I learned is more sort of, being organized, thinking on your feet, thinking critically. Those were the sort of skills that I learned over there. But having studied in all the three systems, whether it's the Indian, the American, and the British
British.
system, I would say personally for me, I think the American system is probably the best. Yeah.
And why is that?
I think it's got to do with the teachers. And of course, there are teachers and there are teachers. But at least whatever exposure I had, Oberlin was a very small liberal arts college where every professor, every class that I took, professors knew you by name. You were not taught by TAs. Oberlin is only for undergrads. So it's small. And that suited me and my learning needs as opposed to, say, going to a very big university.
And when you were applying to Cambridge, of course, academics is what everyone emphasizes on in India. What do they look for in a person who can get into Cambridge University?
Well, of course, the grades, you have to
Yeah.
have the grades, but then beyond that, your extracurricular, and then what makes you unique? What is it that you could bring to the university? They look for that. And I think, students who are committed to their subject and perhaps want to make a difference, go out and make a difference, use what they've learned and make a difference in the world.
And it's a very open way of learning as well, right? There's a lot of discussions, and it's not just one way that you learn and then you have an exam at the end of the year. It's not like that, right?
So in Cambridge, it was pretty much exam based
Okay.
towards the end. We also had something called supervisions where we would be assigned an essay, an extended essay to write. And then we would meet with our supervisor who would give us feedback. But those essays would take a lot of work because a lot of research went into those essays.
And I assume that research skills must have been taught to you at the American school.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because that again is something that I did not learn when I was growing up, for sure.
Yes.
Great. And tell me, when was the turning point that when you decided that I want to get into teaching? Was it because your mom had decided to open a school, or was it something that was always on your mind?
I think I was more an accidental educator. I came back from England and, my mom had just started learning matters and I was still trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. So I went into the classroom and it just so happened that I apprenticed under two master teachers who were just so inspiring and left a deep impact on me. And then after that, there was just no looking back. And since 2007, I've been deeply involved.
And what is your role at the Learning Matters?
So currently, I'm the director of our early years vertical, where we work with children between the ages of 18 months to 5 years. And I work closely with teachers on our pedagogy, which is why we do what we do, just sharing good early childhood practices with parents, because I'm noticing there's a lot of stress with parents related to their children, a lot of needless stress and everything that goes with early childhood. I'm responsible for.
So, how would you describe yourself different from the other schools out there? How are you different from any other preschool in India?
So we're very different because our curriculum, like I was saying, it's child centered, and it really is child centered. In fact, I don't even like to use the word activities. It's never about the activity. It's always about the child, and our whole goal is to see where every child is and to help them make progress from there. So, for example, sometimes when parents ask, for the settling in process, how many days can I stay in the classroom? So it's hard to say that you stay for 3 days or you'll stay for a week because it just depends on the child and how they will take to that transition from home to school. And ours is a strength based model. So, really seeing what a child is doing as opposed to what a child is not doing.
Okay. So there's no books and bags and
No, not at this age. At this age, it's learning through play. And by play, I mean that which is self initiated, self motivating, where children are in charge. They
Okay.
are deciding. So that doesn't mean that there's no structure to the day that they just come and do as they
Anything.
please, correct,
Yeah.
anything and leave.
Sleep.
There is a structure, whether
Yeah.
it's our parent toddler program, which is
Okay.
with the parent, or an independent program, which is for 3 hours. But then within that, there's something which is at the heart of our program called work time. So, work time is where we, as the educators, set up the environment very intentionally,
Okay.
very thoughtfully with invitations. So, like I said, I don't like to use the word activity because it's always about the child. And invitations are basically open ended experiences. So, say, for example, if a table has been set up with, white colored Play Doh with leaves and sticks and, you know, flower petals, that's very open ended. There's no right or wrong. It's process based. You're not working towards a particular end product, right? Children are exploring, and that's where children are really thinking because there's nothing that they have to conform to and produce an end result. So that's where children are doing the thinking. So these invites are all open ended. Say, even in art, it's not about telling children that today we'll sit and make butterflies. There's a large canvas, there may be paints, rollers, and then it's up to the child to explore how they want to.
Yeah. And there's a lot of emphasis on storytelling in learning, right? So, how do you use that in your school?
So there's a difference between storytelling and reading a book. So when you're reading a book, the person who's reading, their focus is on the book as opposed to really connecting with the audience. But when you're telling a story, that's without a book. So you may use props, you may use light and shadow to tell a story. So you're very connected with your audience. And telling stories, it builds language in children. It helps them increase their vocabulary, their listening skills. They learn how to predict, what's going to happen next. They ask questions, and then also just having that joy around reading and books.
So, a lot of parents come to you and, do they know what they're going to get, or are they coming for a typical play school and they look at you and say, actually, what is this? We don't understand it. So, explain it to us.
Yes.
Like, how does that work?
Yes. So we the way now our admission process is, it's changed a little bit. We didn't do this earlier. We invite parents for one-on-one interactions.
Okay.
And prior to that, they have to fill in a form. We just ask them about their parenting beliefs, how they think young children learn, what is the role of an early childhood program according to them. And then we have to see that they're in sync with us and our philosophy. So if they're looking for a school that's a typical traditional school where children are going to be sitting down and, filling in worksheets, that's not Learning Matters. Ours is really a progressive, play-based school, because all the research points that children learn through play. And today, sadly, world over, we're seeing a decline in play.
Okay.
And yes, and we're really pushing that curriculum down sooner and sooner onto young children, and that's coming at a great cost. Today we're seeing, very young children have got anxiety,
Yeah.
they've got depression, we're noticing a rise in narcissism, because we're doing things to children that are not developmentally appropriate. And play, I would say, till the age of 7 is how young children learn. But just world over, that's a big myth that, earlier is better. If my child is not sitting, my child is not learning. That's not true. Young children need to move. They learn through their bodies. They need to touch. They need to feel. They need to taste. They need to smell.
Yeah.
So that's how young children learn.
And neurodiversity is something you really talk about. Firstly, how do you describe it so that parents can understand? And how do you apply it in your school?
So neurodiversity is just that each of us, our brains are wired differently. And if you're a good teacher, you should be able to tap into all kinds of learners in a classroom. Children shouldn't have to go outside for help in different areas. A good teacher knows that if this child is fidgeting so much, this child needs brain breaks. And, within the classroom can offer that, and really understands that not everybody learns in that same typical traditional way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think parents do, ADHD has become a big thing. How can parents manage these things at home as well? Like, do you have any sort of technique that they can use when the child is just throwing a tantrum, crying, screaming? Like, what can they do to allow?
So, all behavior is communication. And if a child is having a meltdown, that's because they don't know how to self regulate. And so you shouldn't be having a meltdown with a child. You have to be that calm in that storm. And before young children learn how to self regulate, they have to learn how to co regulate. So,
Okay.
say a child is, feeling hungry and lunch is late and they're feeling irritable, you would just say that, I understand, darling, you're feeling upset because lunch is late. It'll be ready in 10 minutes. Why don't we read a story till lunch is ready? So you're kind of naming the emotion that you're feeling irritable, why you're feeling irritable and upset, because you're hungry and lunch is late, and you're offering a solution that we can read a story till lunch is ready.
And I think television is a big thing now, right? Where I see a lot of parents, even when we go out for dinners, that they're eating and the child is on the iPad.
Yes.
Or watching a movie on the phone, and only that's the only time they eat. Otherwise, they don't. And I understand that the parents are quite. They don't want that option, but they don't know maybe what else they can do. So, what else can they do to?
So eating is such a sensory experience,
Yeah.
right? I often tell parents that please eat with your child, make it an occasion to eat together. Maybe
Okay.
you have to change your timings.
Hmm.
Maybe you need to eat earlier. But having children, obviously your life is going to change. And if you
Yeah.
want to be a good parent, you have to adapt. It can't be that your child is fitting into your schedule. You have to change your schedule to meet the needs of your child. So, sitting down, eating a meal together, laying a beautiful table, really at Learning Matters, there's beauty in everything that we
Okay.
do. We really believe in honoring children and letting children eat on their own. That's okay if they're dropping a little
Yeah.
bit of their food, but really giving them that autonomy. I see even, 3-year-olds who are very capable, 2-year-olds are very capable of eating on their own, being fed, and then with that screen in front of them, which is detrimental. They won't get to taste the food and,
Feel
feel,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm sure it somewhere affects the way your food is digested, right?
yes,
Because
yes.
surely when you're eating and feeling that food, your digestive system perhaps is working better as opposed to focusing on a television and just eating for the sake of eating.
Hmm.
And of course this works when the parents have the ability to sit and spend that kind of time with their children. But for working parents, where they have no option but to work, how can they inculcate these practices, or what are the options for them?
Have at least one meal with your
Mhm.
child.
Okay.
Breakfast is usually rushed, perhaps, and maybe you're not there for lunch, but maybe dinner
Yeah.
could be one meal that everybody eats together as a family.
Hmm.
And very soon, for young children, they can start eating the same food that's cooked for adults. They don't need separate food.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about parents and children from socioeconomic backgrounds, different diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. How do you make it all equal in the school? Because now I remember when we were growing up, there was no talk about which car are you coming in or
Hmm.
what's happening. But I've seen now that even little kids who are 8, 9 years old, this has become a conversation, that they see, they notice cars, they notice how they're coming. How do you from a young age make sure that this is not a habit that they're developing over a period of time?
I think it's got to do with the value system and what is a priority and what is not. Um,
What can parents do to to evade this?
I think it just depends on your environment and what is it that parents are talking about. Children only pick up these things through their environment. So if the conversations are revolving around cars, then that's what they will pick up. But if, in a family of readers, children, and, that has books all around, it's just a natural part of the environment, a child is more likely to become a reader and focus on that
Yeah.
than on something like cars, perhaps.
So it is very important for parents to be conscious of what they're talking about in front of their kids,
Yes,
perhaps,
yes, and
right?
it's also important to be authentic,
Hmm.
be who you are, because there are people who are not readers, or
Yeah.
perhaps there are people their value system is all about cars.
Yeah.
So you have to be authentic,
Okay.
you know. Yeah.
The other thing that is very useful to know about is how you incorporate environmental consciousness and community engagement in the school.
Hmm.
You said learn through play, but could you give some examples?
Yes. So at Learning Matters, we definitely have some commercial toys, but we really pride ourselves on being a green school in every possible way. And the materials that we use, we call them loose parts. So
Okay.
loose parts are open ended materials. So they could be boxes, they could be tubes, they could be all kinds of paper from home, it could be newsprint paper, wrapping paper, ribbons. So these are the kinds of materials we have at school. Things from nature, loose parts from
Hmm.
nature, whether it's pine cones, sticks, stones. So these are the materials that you'll see at Learning Matters, because then they're totally open ended. There's no predetermined outcome. And that's when children really have the opportunity to think and decide what is it that they would like to do and create. Young children are naturally very curious and
Hmm.
creative. It's actually schools that kill creativity in young children by telling them that, today we're going to be making a rainbow, and then everybody's rainbow has to look
Exactly.
exactly the same. Then where's that child's thinking? So, yeah.
And of course, I think this also comes from a space of feeling confident and being emotionally safe,
Hmm.
because so many times you can peep into somebody else's paper and be like, okay, maybe they're doing a better job. So how do you ensure that the child is emotionally safe to do what they think is right in the school?
So, really, at Learning Matters, children's physical safety is very
Of
important, but
course.
equally important is their emotional
Hmm.
safety. So, for each child to know that they are seen, they're heard, they're loved, and they're honored, and really doing right by children. Um, yeah.
Because at home, you a lot of parents say, no, don't do this. Don't. Is that the right approach, or could there be, if you could guide parents, since you're of course, a professional,
Mhm.
of how they can approach situations better?
Yes. So research says that 80% of the time, adults use commands
Hmm.
with young children. And if you think about it, 80% is a lot. So come here, sit down, eat your food, brush your teeth, go to sleep. Those are all commands where we're telling children
Yeah.
what to do. And a command can only be obeyed or disobeyed. There's no room for thinking.
Ah.
But what an alternative is to use informational statements with young children. So rather than saying wear your shoes, which is a command, you can either obey or disobey. You say shoes go on your feet. You see, then that just you're providing information, and that opens up the space for thinking. And this is not easy. It
Yes.
requires a lot of practice.
Yeah.
I think parents, we've done this at Learning Matters, where
Yeah.
we've taken masking tape and we've put tally marks on every time we've given a child a command, and we've tried to see how many commands we're giving so that you become conscious. Because sometimes you feel, no, I don't command my child, but actually you are, yeah,
Subconsciously.
you are commanding. And nobody likes to be told what to do. I mean, if
That's
I
fair.
started commanding you and saying, okay, now please get up and go and do this, you would resent it, right? So why do we do that to children just because they are younger
Yeah.
and they don't say anything? Really, you have to treat children with respect and with dignity. So how we speak to them, what we say to them, is really important.
This is a very interesting point that you've brought up, which is, you have to speak to children with respect, especially in a society like India, which is
Mhm.
extremely hierarchical. And it's always the only thing you hear growing up is respect your elders, respect. You never hear respect your kids,
Yes.
and I think that comes from, so you're born with it. Like, you always hear that you have to respect the elder, but you don't ever hear that you have to respect the kid. So actually, kids are not really respected.
Hmm.
They're told.
Hmm.
How can people change this? Like, where will this change come?
I think this change will come from how a person views children. So, really, at Learning Matters, our image of children is that they're smart, they're capable,
Mhm.
they're curious. That's how we view children. We don't
Yes,
view them as
they
2
don't know
year olds.
anything.
Yes, we don't view them that they're empty vessels and we have to pour information into their minds. We view them as,
Full of
like I was,
information.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And it's just that they've been on this planet for, say, 18 months, or they've been on this earth for 2 years. But that doesn't make them any lesser than us. That's why our role is to really support their learning, nudge their thinking, ask the right questions, not silly questions. So, silly questions are all the time I'm hearing adults testing children. What color is this?
Yeah.
What shape is this? What comes after one? Testing children on things that an adult already knows, right? So if I respect you, you respect me, you're going to ask me genuine, authentic questions that you
Okay.
don't know the answer to, right? You're not going to ask me what color is your kurta. You can see it's white. You'll only ask me questions that you don't know the answer to. So similarly with children, ask them genuine questions and don't impose your agenda. So say a child is busy doing mark making on paper. Maybe to you it looks like a house, and you don't say, you
Oh,
made
you
a
built a good
house. I see,
house.
say, tell me about what you made. And then there's something called wait time. So when you pose a question to a child, it takes them 12 to 15 seconds to process that question. So usually what adults do is they jump right in to the next one. But if you think about it, if you just count, right? That's 12 seconds. This is based on research that you have to give a child 12 seconds to really process what the question is before they can answer.
I think this also comes from a sense of being embarrassed or worried that your child is going to give the wrong answer in front of a bunch of people.
Mhm.
We've seen this as well, that in a classroom, sometimes when the teacher is teaching at Instruco, there's a parent sitting in the back, and the minute the teacher asks a question, the child is maybe just thinking, and the mom is like, I just told you this yesterday, this is the answer,
Yeah.
and the teacher sometimes is just like, just take a pause, please, maybe encourage more independent learning.
Mhm.
So what are your views on independent learning, and how important is that for parents to understand, to just let their children be?
That is most important. Just let your child be. Don't overschedule them into,
200
multiple,
sports and
yes, multiple classes. Really give them that downtime, because only when children are bored are they going to be thinking
I agree.
creatively, and their minds will be ticking, and then they'll figure out what is it that they need to do. But if you're constantly overscheduling them, then you've robbed them of that opportunity to think creatively on their own. And it's not about always doing, it's also about just being,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. I think as an entrepreneur, there are times when I'm just sitting and I'm running from pillar to post doing things, but my best thoughts come when I'm bored.
Mm.
Sometimes when I'm just sitting on the beach, I have this like moment where I'm like, oh my God, I can do this. But that's only when I've truly just, I'm fed up of not working and I'm bored. And that's when I have that one idea.
Yes.
So I think that the same works for children as well, because we perhaps feel it's the opposite, that the more they do, the more they learn, but
Yes.
maybe that's not
No,
correct.
that's not correct at all. And for young children, learning is happening all the time. It's not that only if my child is sitting is my child learning. That's a big myth. For young children, everything is a novel experience.
Yeah.
Right? So learning is happening all the time. They're like sponges.
Yeah.
And 0 to 3 is a very, very critical period. That's where the maximum amount of brain development takes place. There are actually 1 billion neural connections that take place per second
Wow.
in a child's brain. And that depends on the kinds of experiences that are offered to a child. So whether those connections will take place or whether they'll be pruned all depends on those experiences. So really, the early years are very critical in shaping and laying that brain architecture, and determining whether a child is going to grow up to be confident, a child is going to grow up to be a risk taker, is a child going to grow up to be empathetic. If you look at any adults who are perhaps dysfunctional or not well adjusted in society, you just have to go back and look at their childhood.
Between 0 and 3?
0 to 3 or even 0 to 6. What was their childhood all about? What
So you
were
can
those
identify
experiences?
At that age what this adult is going to turn out to be like, mostly in terms of personality, do you think?
If you've had a secure childhood,
Yeah.
where you've had caregiver consistency, which means that you had that one adult in your life who was emotionally present for you. So for most children, I would say perhaps it's mom who was, caring, consistent towards a child. Then they'll probably grow up to be emotionally secure and be well adjusted adults. But say you grew up in a family with a lot of conflict, there was a lot of turmoil, there was a lot of
Yelling,
inconsistency. I mean, there is resilience, but by and large, if you had a happy and secure childhood, you will grow up to be a confident, happy human being yourself.
A lot of people now talk about meditation, which has obviously been there forever, but now is when the awareness is coming, because there are so many mental health issues that are surfacing and people are openly talking about them, as opposed to there being a taboo earlier. How important is meditation for children? And should it be the real, like, sit and meditate, or how can parents help them meditate or develop this practice from a young age?
So, young children, I feel there's a lot for us as adults to learn from young children, because they're actually always in the present moment.
That's so true.
Children are not thinking like adults about any regrets from the past. They don't have anxiety about the future. They're always in the present moment. A child could be crying inconsolably 5 seconds ago and then they're laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
They forgot about it. They don't hold any grudges.
Yeah.
They're so pure, young children. That's why I think there's a lot for us as adults to learn from them. And I strongly think it's a privilege to be working with young children. So they don't need to be taught meditation, which what we adults need to do for our minds and go through that boot camp. Children are very much in the here and now. They're born pure.
Yeah.
It's that conditioning that then changes them for the better or for the worse.
You went and did a course in Harvard
Mhm.
on infusing joy in learning.
Mhm.
So, what was that course about, and how can parents use that again?
So that course was actually over here, but it was conducted by Harvard professors.
Okay.
But joy plays a huge role in learning. Learning always has to be joyful. That's what makes it fun and engaging for a student, and that's so important for a teacher to bring in an element of joy into his or her teaching practice.
How can they do that in the senior grades as well? Because of course learning matters only caters to a certain age group,
Mhm.
but once the child is out of, say, your school,
Mhm.
what school can they go to and experience the same type of learning?
You
Because
know,
what after?
yeah, that's a question that I get asked a lot. I would say that in Delhi, sadly, the school chooses you as opposed to you choosing a school. There's a dearth of good schools, and still there's a lot of emphasis again on that whole academic of reading, writing, which is a
Yeah.
particular skill. But say schools were to bring in the arts, dance and drama, and that had as much importance as, say, reading, writing, testing.
Hmm.
I feel we'd be tapping into all kinds of learners.
I
Say,
have a feeling, Samini, that I don't mean to be negative, but those schools might be empty with no enrollments because
you know,
parents are so obsessed with exams.
yes.
And we as a culture are so obsessed with exams because then high school is one. And then after that, how do you get into college without those grades,
But the
So
world has changed a lot.
I agree.
Has changed dramatically. And I would say perhaps the only thing that hasn't changed is the educational
Hmm.
system. It's
Yeah.
still based on that factory model.
Hmm.
But by the time, children who are right now, say 3, and they graduate, we don't even know what the world is
Hmm.
going to be. But you
Absolutely.
do know you want to hire somebody who's a thinker. You want to hire somebody who can be creative. You want to hire somebody who can communicate, somebody who can collaborate. These are the skills of the 21st century. You don't need to memorize
Yeah.
copious amounts of information. It's all now
Available.
on our fingertips.
Yeah.
And that's really lower order thinking, but higher order thinking, application based thinking. That's what,
Logic and
yes,
yeah, things like that.
yes. And really seeing what every child is interested in.
Mm.
Like I said, school can be tough for
Yeah.
many children
It was very
because
tough for me.
you have to be good at so many different subjects. But
And you
if
can't be,
yeah,
right? You
you
can't.
can't be.
Like I think there's a thing about left brain, right brain, although I think that is a myth in the sense of how it works with math and history and creative subjects
Mhm.
versus the very analytical ones. But I wasn't great at math, but I was very good at the other subjects, economics, and I think that applies the same kind of logic, I
Mhm.
guess. But it was perhaps a lot to do with my teachers again,
Yes.
of
So research shows that the number one factor that impacts student learning is the teacher.
And the problem, of course, is that you are one school that's doing that beautifully. And I've seen that myself because I've visited the school and I was so impressed with it. I loved it. But parents who are not in Delhi or who are in different parts of, the country, and they don't have these options, but they think this way, how can they infuse this type of learning within their children? What are their options?
So, just basically knowing the research on how young children learn, if you look at the Scandinavian countries like Finland, they are play based till the age of 7. And of course, their ecosystem is different. They have forests, they're out, and all the learning that happens through nature. But Finland has repeatedly come out on top of this test called PISA, which is Performance of International Student Assessment. And this test really measures not what you know, but how well you think. And I think we came 74 out of 75.
No way.
Yeah,
Don't say
I think
that.
this was in 2009. I don't think
Oh my
we've
God.
taken the PISA test
We
again. It was
probably are not even
administered.
qualified to take it
It was
anymore.
administered to 15-year-olds.
Oh my God.
Because where does our educational system encourage children to think?
Hmm.
Right? I'll give you a real example. We had somebody come and intern with us a few years ago at Learning Matters for a little over a year. And he was a IIT grad from Kharagpur. And he was responsible for placements, for the interviews, for his peers, for the interviews, preparing them for the interviews. So one of his peers asked him, "So when the question comes, tell me about yourself. What should I say in the interview?"
Yeah.
So he said, "How can I help you with that question? You have to be able to talk about yourself. I can't coach you on that question." And that's when it really struck him that, our educational system doesn't encourage
Yeah.
students to think
Yeah.
and to question and to ask. And obedience actually can be very dangerous. We
Yeah.
know obedience can be very dangerous for democracy. If you see what
Yes.
happened in Nazi Germany,
Yeah.
because they were just following
Mhm.
instructions. Nobody questioned that what are we doing to other
And
human
even today,
beings,
look at what's
even
happening.
today.
Yeah,
Yes,
politically.
yes. So you want to be able to ask questions and think critically and know that am I doing,
The right or the wrong
yeah,
thing.
yeah. And being able to think for yourself, that really starts in the early years. It's too late by the time a child is 16, 17,
Mm.
because that muscle was never
Developed. Yeah.
right? You were constantly told that
Mm.
this is what it is, this is the answer, this is what you have to write. Whereas you won't really got given a chance to
Yeah.
think for yourself.
No, I remember. I think when I was in school, my biggest excitement was, oh my God, I filled 5 registers and mugged everything up. And it used to be so exciting to go look at how many registers I filled. And it wasn't just me, I think it was a lot of kids.
Mhm,
And now I think looking back, I feel like I can't believe that was the culture.
mhm,
That the longer your answer, the higher your chances are to get better grades,
mhm,
But if
mhm.
you give a short answer, I mean, it just, even if it did the job, it was not good enough. It had to be 500 words, crazy. I think our Gurukul system, though, was quite good before the British came and sort of eliminated that. And really, that's when it really became rote, right? When, tell me, do you think schools now do enough to encourage self expression?
I think schools can do way more. Say children are required to read a novel. Why is it that every child is expected to write a book report? Why is it that one child can't act it out, or one child can make a song on it? As long as you get to know, yes, the child has read the book, has understood the book, right? It shouldn't be that one size fits all, that everybody has to write a book report. Really play to each child's strengths, which is why having a small student teacher ratio is important.
What is the ideal student teacher ratio in your, well, according to research?
I would say 20 children in a classroom, perhaps, and no more than that. I mean, 18 is perhaps perfect.
So, with that logic, all these board exams, which not just create academic stress but emotional stress, should just not be there, because why should one child take the same exam all 100 children are taking when we're learning so differently?
Correct.
What if you were in the education system and policy, what would you change?
I would change this one size fits all approach and really look at honoring and nurturing every child. So for that, then you need to have a smaller school, and that volume will have to be shrunk.
Yeah.
And really look at the quality. I would invest a lot in my teachers, because that's what really determines a
I
good
agree.
school. All that is wonderful, to have great facilities, but really what really impacts the learning are the
Yeah.
teachers. So really knowing their motivation for being in this field, being in this profession, knowing their why, and really looking for teachers who are serious and are committed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we work with so many schools and teachers at Instrucco, and I think the one thing we really emphasize is on the teacher. The minute I think in the first 5 minutes, you can figure out whether this teacher is teaching for the sake of loving it, or because she wants to just make money and that's it.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with making money, but it has to be a blend. It can't
Yes.
be
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to teach with your head and your heart.
Yeah.
You know, what you feel for children, that's something that can't be taught.
Yeah.
It's either you have it or you don't have it. Just like how some people are dog people.
Hmm.
You know that okay, you
Yes.
connect well with dogs and you like dogs, and there's some people who
Just
don't.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be in the profession for the right reasons.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think of board exams now, coming to that? Like, what is your opinion?
Well, I'm experiencing it with my son.
Okay.
He's gonna have his boards in March of next year.
How is his nervous system?
Oh, he's totally relaxed.
I think that's credit to you, perhaps.
I
every
don't
time.
know. I don't know. I think I'm feeling anxious and stressed about
No
it.
way, you can't.
Because he's the most relaxed child
Okay.
I've ever met. But let's see how it goes. I mean, yeah.
But
Yeah.
what do you think of it as a concept? Do you think it should exist? Or, I mean, what is the reason behind it?
Yeah.
Grade 10 and 12, why have we demarcated those two grades? And why do you think it is the way it is at the moment, the pattern?
I don't.
Does something happen at 15 and 7? I understand 12 is like, okay, you need to get into college, and 10 is maybe to prepare. But what does it do? Like, how does it help?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure how the board exams
Did it
would.
help you? You didn't take, you had
No,
your, yeah.
I because I was then in the American school, so
Yeah.
I didn't take the board exams. But just looking at our world today, how relevant is it
Mm.
to our world today? Now we have all kinds of professions which didn't exist.
Yeah. A couple of questions, that I think, coming to what parents think about, what concerns do they come to you with mostly?
Mostly they come with, I don't know what to do with my child.
Yes.
But they don't realize that it's not what you do, it's how you are with your child, being fully present. And being
Mm.
fully present means obviously being physically present, but being emotionally present as well, which means putting your phone away
Yeah.
when you are with your child. Young children learn through this process called serve and return. So
Okay.
your child says something and then you respond, and then the child responds back, kind of like a game of tennis. This is from
Mm.
Harvard Center on the Developing Child. So that's how young children learn. They don't learn through a screen. And I think screens have just become convenient
Mm.
for parents. Like you were talking about earlier, even I've noticed parents just putting very, very young children in front of a screen so that they can eat their food, or maybe they can buy a little bit of silence.
And these learning
For
apps
themselves.
that exist, that are quite a lot, where the child is just sitting all day and like playing on a learning app.
It's addictive,
Hmm.
and like I said, young children have not had that life experience.
Hmm.
So then they won't get to experience life if they're constantly on the screen, and they don't learn through that screen, that one way interaction. They
Mm.
have to interact with human beings
Yeah.
who need to be responsive to them. They need to touch, they need to feel, taste. They learn through their senses.
Hmm.
Through their bodies. So they need to move around and explore. Parents often feel that if my child is not sitting, my child is not learning. And again, that's
That's
not
not
true.
true.
They need to move. And similarly for us adults as well, when you're sitting at your computer for so many hours, sometimes
You're drained.
Yeah, you're drained out, you're tired. But then the minute you give yourself a break, you move,
Yeah.
and maybe you go up and down the stairs, it sends oxygen rushing to your brain, and then again you're ready
Yeah.
for learning.
Yeah, I think, of course, screens are inevitable and they're going to happen, and it's more and more. But I think the right balance is what parents really need to figure. Talking about stress, anxiety has always been quite a taboo in India. I would say even now, where people or parents don't know how to address it, or if children are, how do you encourage children and parents? Like, do you think parents should have a particular time where they sit and talk to their children about how you're feeling, like, so that it just becomes a practice? Because sometimes children don't even know how to communicate it. So what can parents do to enable that?
So having a deep connection with children, communicating with them, letting them know that it's perfectly all right to make mistakes. Seeing children should see their parents as human and not as perfectionists, so if you make a mistake, just own up to it.
Okay.
And if you lose your cool, just apologize for it. Not that it's okay for me to do it just because I'm an adult, but it's not okay for a 2-year-old to have a tantrum.
So you think it's
Right.
very important for parents also to apologize to their children?
Yes, absolutely. You were frustrated, and maybe you had a long day and it all came out and you didn't mean to snap, but you did, and then you just apologize for
Yeah.
the you didn't mean to do that, but that's how it came out. And next time you'll be a little more careful.
Yeah. And how do you define or how do you strike a balance between being a supportive and an overprotective parent?
Yeah, today it's crazy. I see 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds coming to school with their mom, their nurse, their nanny, the PSO. I just really wonder, what are we doing to children?
Yeah.
Children being carried when they're perfectly capable of walking. You're robbing them of that opportunity. There's this parenting style which is called snowplow parenting, where you're like all the time clearing the path of any kind of obstacles for your child. Then how will your child learn to deal with life? Because you're constantly clearing it for them.
Yeah.
So you have to strike that balance. And there's a lot of anxiety, I would say, irrational fear today, with regards to children. And all the research points that the world is safer today than it was 50 years ago. But there is this fear, there is this anxiety. It's because of the media, because that's what sells, But like I said, all the research points that the world is safer today than it was. It's just that now, because of the news, we hear about it.
And there's also
so
a lot of
much
fake
more.
news. So sometimes something is exaggerated to such an extreme level where, there were, for example, I remember when I was traveling to France, everyone was calling me a few months ago saying, oh my God, there have been riots. And I was just, I was like, no, actually, I'm in the main town and they're probably happening in pockets, but it's safe. So just the news, the way it spread to India or other parts of the world, people thought, oh my God, my life is in danger, whereas it was totally relaxed. There was nothing really going wrong. How can parents fix that? See, now once you're an overprotective parent, you don't even realize what you're doing, right? You sometimes don't even know that, okay, let me just be, or the minute the child is about to fall, they'll go running and then they'll scream at the nanny that how could you let this happen? How can they stop themselves from doing? What can they practice actively, like something that works?
I think doing some introspection on what is your parenting style? What is it that you want from your child? Do you want your child to be a problem solver, be a risk taker, grow up to be resilient, to think for themselves? Then that's how you have to engage with them. But if you're going to constantly clear the path, never let them get hurt. I mean, childhood is, you will fall. That's inevitable. Right? You'll fall and you'll discover, okay, if I run on the concrete, I'll fall, I'll get hurt. But if you're constantly going to cotton wool them, that's coming at a great cost. How will they build their self-esteem if they're not able to do things on their own? Everything is done for them.
You talked about parenting style, and you, of course, are aware of that because you're, educated in this field. You understand it. But for just a layman, a parent is not like, what is a parenting style? How can they educate themselves about that, perhaps when they're about to have a child?
Yeah, I think parents need to read up on the research on how young children learn.
Any books you recommend that they can
Yes,
read?
there are many books. There's a book called The Importance of Being Little, by somebody called Erica Christakis. There's a book called The Gardener and the Carpenter by Alison Gopnik. There's a book called Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy. These are just 3 books that they could start out by reading. There's somebody who is an expert on attachment. Her name is Erica Commissar. Her books. She has some podcasts as well.
Yeah, even Heidi Preep talks a lot about attachment styles. And so it is important that parents just don't go into it without knowing anything.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Because
It's not just
easy
to get,
to become a parent, but then to do what is right for your child.
Yeah.
that not necessary that every parent
No.
knows. And
In fact,
that's
more
when,
often than not, I would say, is
yeah,
that they just don't know what's going on.
yeah. And really sadly, I would say the world is probably a better place for adults, but not a better place for children. I mean, if you look back at our childhood, it was free.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we were out in the park, we went to school. It wasn't such a big deal going to
No.
school. It wasn't such a big hoop-de-doo, right? We went to school, we came back, we had lunch.
Yeah.
Evenings we played in the park. Um, we were not being supervised constantly.
Yeah. Also, we didn't have screens.
Yeah, we didn't have screens. Lot of outdoor play.
Yeah.
That's what childhood should be.
Yeah.
Outdoors, in nature, left to your own devices to do your own thinking. That's the kind of play we encourage at Learning Matters, where
Yeah.
children are deciding. It's self-chosen, self-motivating. And then all the learning that takes place through play. Play really helps build the skills the children need in the 21st century. So if there's, one red swing, 3 children want to get onto it on their own, you'll
They'll
notice
figure
them
it out.
problem solving. They'll say, okay, first, Raya, you go on the swing, I'll count to 5, and then it's going to be my turn. On
Yeah.
their own. They don't need adults to jump in and say, sharing is caring. That's not how children learn.
Another thing that, we as a society are really bad at is accepting failure. And therefore, I guess you have exams and grades and you rank 34 out of 35 and you came first. How can parents develop a healthy attitude towards failure? Because sometimes they make it about themselves, and they're embarrassed or awkward that, listen, my child is not doing well, so what do I say at a party when I go meet my friends? How do they develop this attitude?
Yeah, I mean, focus on what your child is doing, what they are good at. Maybe your child is not good at these subjects, but your child is a great golfer. Focus on that. Or your child wants to, play the guitar and is really passionate about music. Follow that rather than, again, what your child is not doing. Because, like I said, school is hard. And for them to know that it's okay to make mistakes, right? As long as you learn from your mistakes. And I don't think school is for every child, because school is like a particular model. You have to be good at reading and writing. Those are the key skills to be successful in school. But there are very famous people like, I think, Billy Bob Thornton. He couldn't, he wasn't very good at reading. So he would just get somebody to read the lines to him and he would just memorize it. So navigating your way, and to be a successful adult, you don't have to do brilliantly at school. I mean, you may have done brilliantly at school, but doesn't mean you're a well-adjusted adult. Maybe you don't get along well with people. You're not a team player. You don't know how to communicate, or
your emotional intelligence is
is low. You can't think creatively, right? Which is what the world needs now, given how much it's changed.
You talked a lot about obedience, I remember early on. But again, discipline is important, right?
Yes.
So setting that boundary, having that discipline. A lot of kids, I think more and more so, have become completely, they just go rogue at times. And how do parents instill discipline in their children and set a healthy boundary?
So by having a consistent routine, that's very important for children. Not that, I can eat my lunch one day at 1, I can eat my lunch one day at 4 p.m., just having that consistency. And we all need that routine in our life. And then being firm with children, but with kindness and with love. That's what's important. And then also being sure about what you're saying. If you're going to be wavering, supposing it's time for a child to give up the screen, and an older child who's got, say, 20 minutes on the iPad, and then they're saying no 5 more minutes, and then you have to be firm and you have to know, okay, no darling, it was 20 minutes and now it's time to give it up till the next time. And also giving children time for transitions, supposing the family's moving to another city, preparing children. I don't think we do that enough, just letting them know what it's going to be like, so that they also know what's going to come next. I think Sometimes children feel anxious when they don't know what's going to come next. And I think that's for adults as well. But if
Yeah.
you know what's going to happen, then you feel better prepared, you feel safer.
Yeah.
Talking to children.
Involving them, I think, in
Yes,
decisions as well, right?
involving them in
Decision making.
decisions. Yes, yes, and giving them more credit,
Hmm.
you know, giving them more credit.
With respect to, say, parents having a lot of arguments at home and their child, this is a very common issue, I think, all over the world. And sometimes, they just don't know what to do. I guess, yes, the right thing to do is to not argue and politely talk when your child is around. But how do parents who are going through this conflict at home um, protect their children from it? What can they do?
I think it's good if children, um, they have to be exposed to differences of opinion,
Hmm.
of conflict. The kind of conflict that I'm talking about is not the
Screaming and
yeah,
shouting.
not that kind of conflict,
Yeah.
but that people can have different ideas and different thoughts, and we can agree to disagree, right? But in a healthy, respectful way. But as far as that other kind of conflict goes, that's acrimonious.
Hmm.
If it's going to persist, then for young children, then parents should take a call what's going to work, and then maybe they're not together.
Hmm. I have a very important question. A lot of times parents stay together because they think that that's better for the child, and perhaps even sleep in different rooms and, don't have the best relationship. Do you think it probably makes, I mean, is it better for parents perhaps to separate, and can children process what a divorce is? Or do you think it's more important for parents to be together but be unhappy and keep squabbling and then have the child in the same
Hmm.
house?
No, probably better than to separate, because then you have to be whole and complete in yourself. And only if a parent is well nourished can a parent give
Mm.
to their child. If they themselves are unhappy, then I feel they'll only be able to give unhappiness,
Yeah.
right? Um, so then maybe taking those hard calls and deciding, and for the child to know that, even though mom and dad are living in different homes, they still love you,
Yeah. And
and
it's
that
important.
doesn't change.
And I still, at a lot of times, once you separate, parents perhaps just don't even see eye to eye. That you think they should do for the sake of the child, right? To really have, what, again, like, how does that affect a child when they see that the parents are just not talking? And does that really emotionally disturb them?
Yes, yes, it does disturb children. But for parents to speak to each other respectfully, and any difference of opinion, can be worked out. But it does have an impact
Mm.
on children.
So, for children who have gone through this impact, what practices can parents, do to help them recover? Of course, like therapy, perhaps. But how do you then help a child in their later years when they're acting out because of these issues?
I think they would probably act out if there was no communication, and really keeping those channels of communication open with children, and to let them know what is happening,
Mm.
um, and really re-emphasizing that their love for their child doesn't change
Mm.
just because the situation has changed, and
Yeah.
that they're still their mom, still their dad, still available to them,
Hmm.
and being emotionally responsive to the child.
Okay, that's quite heavy, but what is, coming back to Learning Matters and you a little bit, what has been your proudest moment as a director um, at the Learning Matters?
I think for me, it's every time a child walks into school with a smile on their face,
Yeah.
and they have that sheer joy that I see on their face. That's really
Hmm.
my proudest moment. Sorry, I'm just getting a little
No, please, of
emotional.
course.
Um, Also, when parents tell us that their child was missing school on the weekend, they wanted to come to school during the holidays, I
Yeah.
think that's my proudest moment.
That's lovely. I think to want to go to school is actually the best thing that a school owner can feel. What is the one thing in the teacher training, I guess, in India that is a non negotiable for you to add to that every teacher should have this skill? Of course, aside from, like you said, a dog parent, like a dog person or not, what is that
Hmm.
one skill a teacher should have?
So I think teacher training has to be compulsory for all teachers. This profession has to be taken seriously
Mm.
because you're shaping young lives and they are the future of our nation. And I think to really have that understanding, that deep understanding on how young children learn, how children learn.
Mm.
So it's based on neuroscience of learning, not just for the
Mm.
sake of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the one message you want to give to parents, educators, policymakers?
So for policymakers, I would say most of the time, the people making the policy have no idea how young children learn. So I would say for them, they have to spend at least a year in the classroom before they set any policy to really understand how children learn. For parents, I would say don't rush your children. Today, childhood is very rushed and it's crazy. I mean, parents who have children who are just 1 and 13 months are coming to school to find out about admissions. At that age, they need to be at home.
Yeah.
They need to be in their safe environment with their parents, with their, if they're an extended family, with their grandparents, and just be.
Mm.
They don't need to be rushed and pushed into classes. Honestly, at Learning Matters, we never took children before the age of 2.5.
Okay. So that is the right age.
3,
3.
I would say, is the right age to go to preschool.
Hmm.
But here in Delhi, at least at 3, they end up going to big school.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Okay.
3, they end up going to big school.
So when is the right age to go to the big school?
5.
Okay.
5 when they're in kindergarten. Not at 3. The younger the child, the smaller the school it should be, the more nurturing, the more sort of personalized it should be. So children can feel emotionally safe because they're just leaving their home environment.
Yeah.
And at that age, at 2, when they're leaving, of course there's going to be crying. If they're not going to miss their mom at 2, when are they going
Not
to?
at 21. They don't miss them at
I
21.
know. So then when parents want to know, like, why is my child crying? It's natural.
Yeah.
They want their mom at that age.
Yeah.
Right?
You talked about policymakers. I have one really interesting question because, the new education policy has come about after 34 years. What do you think of the NEP 2020?
So I think it says all the right things, but then the implementation. That's what is important.
Yeah.
I
think with that we can maybe silence is better than.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Samini. I know you wanted to read a poem out, and I'm
Yes.
very excited to listen to it. So please.
So this is a short poem. I have come to a frightening conclusion. I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate, hurt, or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de escalated and a child humanized or dehumanized.
That's so lovely. Thank you so much. Honestly, it was such a pleasure to have you. It was
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. Thank you.